but no sane person can handle that. Like, no sane person can see someone that they love dying, basically, is what it is.
If
Killing
there's
themselves.
if there's no consequences to what I'm doing, then why would I stop?
I heard you say that you are a geneticist, Melderon, working on the fields of opioid addiction, and I heard you say, Defcamp, that you are a certified counselor. I can't remember what word you used.
Recovery specialist, yeah.
Recovery specialist dealing with opioid addiction. Is that right?
Yeah, and I'm also in recovery myself. So I've been clean for about 6 years. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, so it's something that's very I
that's
think
a very interesting family dynamic. Is there like
oh yeah.
Is there a story there that you guys are comfortable telling? Or is it just like independently?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No, I'm very open about it. Yeah,
mine's
so
much shorter. So let me start just, and then you can. I want you to hammer yours home. But basically, the reason I'm in this line of work, originally my PhD is in insect genetics, so it's completely different from this. But when I moved back to Philadelphia after my my PhD, I was looking for jobs, and I use actually Matt's story as inspiration, because the beautiful thing about genetics is no matter what animal you are, human or fruit fly, we all have DNA. We all have the same types. All the rules are the same basically.
Mm-hmm.
So you can really take what you learn from a model system and apply it to humans. So I use Defcamp's story as an inspiration to kind of look for jobs. And one of the, when I was applying for positions, one of my possible kind of like things I could have done was working in addiction. So I had the passion for it from Defcamp, and I was like, maybe I'll design a project around this, and that's why I work in addiction now. So I didn't go to school for this. I just kind of applied myself to it.
Got it. So you applied what you had towards that problem, and that's what you're pursuing now.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was primarily because of inspiration and what Defcamp has done in his life. So you can go. I just wanted to caveat that real quick before you start. Yeah.
Take the stage, Defcamp.
Yeah. So I guess where do I start? So yeah, I have ever since I was younger, had problems with addiction. At the time I was like 12 years old. I was already basically an addict, like using whether it was pot, alcohol. When I was 13, I broke my leg, and I already had I already had some, just issues that kids have. Maybe like I have Tourette's, I have some other stuff. So I always felt like I was very prone to looking for escapes and stuff like that. So when I was 13, and also we have addiction in our family on both sides, my dad and my uncles. So very prevalent in our family and in our environment as well. So yeah, when I was 13, I broke my leg and was given opiates for the first time. And it was like something switched in my brain, for the first time, is like, I need to have this all the time. So I had struggled with addiction basically from that point on. I went to my first rehab when I was like 18 and went to multiple rehabs, multiple psych wards, and all this, crazy shit. And then, after a while, Melderon, we come from a family where it's basically me, my brother, and my mom. So we were really tight knit, and they had always, been there and helped me. And finally, when I was about 26, I would say, I had, people in recovery talk about like the moment of clarity or a time when you really, because I had gone to rehab before. I had really tried other times to get clean. And something in me was just, I had basically hit, you say you hit rock bottom, and then you go even lower and lower and lower, and you figure out that like there really is, the ultimate low. And I kind of got to that point.
There are multiple rock bottoms, huh?
Yeah, there definitely are. So I got to the point where I had basically lost everything, and was basically on, the only other options were, taking my life or getting clean. Like that was, and and that was at the road where I was at. And I had tried getting clean multiple times, and I didn't think it was going to be possible for me. But I had that moment where I said that this is it for me. Like I have to try to take control of my life. And fortunately for me, I did. I know a lot of people don't get to that. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't get to that point. They unfortunately, pass before that happens. I have a lot of friends that have died from addiction. It's really bad in this
Wow.
area, opiate addiction in particular.
In the
So
Philadelphia area?
in the Philadelphia area, it's
Okay.
extremely bad here.
Mm.
So yeah, fortunately for me, I found something that worked for me. I had kind of, you know, tried every other option, and I had tried all these different things, and I kind of just finally, for whatever reason, said this is it, and ended up getting clean. Moved to another part of the country for a while just to get out. People, places, and things is a big part
Change of
of
scenery.
whether
Mhm.
it's any kind of addiction. So I changed scenery for a while. Got into a relationship where, unfortunately, towards the end of the relationship, my significant other had started using again.
Oh man.
Yeah, so I came back home before I had relapsed. Fortunately, I did not. I came back home and kind of fell into, but by going to where I was going there for counseling and stuff like that, had really just found that for my own sake, for my own recovery, and a lot of people will say this, you keep what you have by giving it away or by helping other people. And I found out that
Mm.
one of the most beneficial things for me on my recovery was helping other people. And this is why I talk about it in my streams too, because
Mhm.
with the whole Corona thing right now, my CRS thing is not, I had worked there for a couple years, but now I talk about it in my streams. I like to talk about it wherever I am, just be able to, if someone hits me up on Discord or just wants to talk about it, for me, that's what really helps me, is just helping other people in this,
Mhm.
in their addiction, or if they just want to talk or anything like that. So, I had started working as a certified recovery specialist, which is basically suited for people that are in recovery to help those that are, trying to get clean and stuff like that. So,
Word.
yeah, and then Melderon had obviously had always been there for me during my struggles and shit like that. So he really was, like I said, my family was really tight knit. My mom, my brother, and he had been through a lot of it. And I think for us, it was a really big part of our lives. And one thing that's interesting, and I talk about this a lot, is that WoW was, every time I would either get clean or I would get out of rehab, video games was something that a lot of times was an escape for me, a good escape. You know what I mean? I would get
Mhm.
clean, and instead of going back out there and calling friends and do whatever, I would play WoW, and I would get into these conversations with people, and I would meet people online, and some of the people that I met online, I consider some of my best friends. Especially
Uh-huh.
now. So WoW has always been a really good outlet for me, and I know a lot of people also in recovery that has kind of helped me throughout the years, and has really, you can ask Melderon. I was not the kind of person that would come on a show, talk or stream or do anything like that, and just by playing WoW and talk to people, it really helped me come out of my shell, and so something for me that I think I got a lot out of it. Whether it was just the social aspect of the game. That's why I love
Mhm.
WoW so much. I think
A
it's really
positive
helped me
change
come
of
out of my
environment,
shell.
almost. It sounds like.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, I mean that's kind of the whole story there. But it's interesting how much WoW has played a really integral part in all of that.
Mhm.
I think for Melderon too. I think I know he can probably attest to this as well. Is like a lot of the people that we have met in this game are people that we talk to every day.
Mhm.
People that we um, call our friends, and especially when you look at people like in the community as well, like Cargos and Grays. These are friends of ours. These are people that we talk about all this kind of stuff with, and it's through this game that we met all those people. So it's pretty amazing how a game like WoW can change your life like that. So yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
That's quite a story.
yeah. I
Um,
tried to rush through it pretty quickly there.
yeah,
Sorry.
if you don't mind, I'd like to
Yeah,
ask you a couple questions from
yeah,
along the
yeah,
timeline. Um,
yeah.
and if at any point you guys don't feel comfortable like going there, just say, "Hey, let's move on. No problem." But
Yeah.
uh, so I don't have like I've considered myself at various times to be addicted to video games. That's a very
Hmm.
different thing from a physical addiction.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and I wonder, Melderon, if you could say a little bit about what it was like to kind of be supportive of your brother when he was struggling with this. You want to share a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, it's a difficult. It was a difficult time for sure. Before he got clean, after he got clean, it's easy to support. It's easy to support someone when they want to do good for themselves, right?
Right. The idea that people will stop for someone on the road who's pushing their own car. People want to help people who are helping themselves.
Yeah. But before that, it was difficult. Like, it's primarily for two reasons. Like, no one really knows what it's like to be addicted to a substance, right? So our father was an addict as well. So when I was growing up, my parents split up because of his addiction, and
wow,
I had an understanding of it a little bit, but I didn't, maybe more than most. And that's why I think most people look at addicts as criminals, or they're weak, or whatever you want to call it, is because they don't get it, right? I had a little bit of a step into that door. So I didn't feel that way, but I also didn't understand it, right? And those are the two parts of it. Or understand my role in what's the word? Allowing someone to do something to themselves.
Enablement?
Yeah. Enablement. Thank you. How you may enable the situation, right? So what I did was I actually started going to 12-step. So there's 12-step programs for family members too.
Okay.
Most people probably don't know that, but so you not only
12 steps
the addict
being like made famous by like Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous.
It's called Al-Anon.
Yeah, Al-Anon. Okay. Yeah.
So my way of supporting Defcamp was actually finding out what the hell I was doing wrong. And how my dad's addiction affected me as a child, and how it affected me as an adult. So I really couldn't support him until I was getting better in my head, doing the things for me. So
what did that take?
It was tough. So my mom started to go, right. So my mom started to go to these things because of Defcamp's addiction, and she was like, "Hey, you need to do this." And I'm like, "Why the hell do I need to, that's your initial gut reaction, is why the hell do I need to do this?
Why do
it's
I
not
need
my
to change?
problem.
He's the one that needs to change. Exactly. Yeah.
But it helped big time. Not only did it help me, but it helped my interactions with Defcamp. So he knew that I wasn't playing the game anymore. Because this whole thing is addiction, all these things, really what it is when you get down to it, like from a psychiatric level, is this dance everyone does. It's this weird dance everyone has a part in, and it all stems from childhood. It also and genetics, and a lot of things are put into it, but it's environment and genetics have equal, sometimes even depending on the person. And so it's really hard for an addict to get clean if their family's not doing the right thing either.
Absolutely.
So all those things coming together, I think, allowed Defcamp to realize that he wasn't doing the right thing, right? And that's when he wanted to get clean. When my mom and I were getting more intelligent about the thing, about what
kind of things did you guys modify that kind of improved the environment and set the stage for that?
Boundaries is a big one, right? So the biggest thing for me was, if Defcamp came home high, I would just be like, all right, let's go into your room. Let's make sure you're okay. Let's put the covers over you. And what do you need? What can I do for you?
Yeah.
Every family member would think that's what you do as a family member,
love.
right? That's love, right? It's not. It's enablement, and it's it's telling that person what you're doing to yourself is okay. I can handle it. But no sane person can handle that. Like, no sane person can see someone that they love dying, basically, is what it is.
If there's no consequences to what I'm doing, then why would I stop?
Yeah.
Right? If nothing happens, if I do something horrible, if I come home high and I steal whatever, and nobody says anything, why am I not going to do it again? So one thing that I, tell people that are in recovery now is that, addiction isn't just the disease of that person. It's a family disease, and it takes a family usually to, get help together. Right. So, like I always tell people, is like the best thing that my family did for me was to get educated and to, and that ended up having some pretty horrible consequences for me at the time. I got kicked out of my house. I, didn't have any, I was homeless for a while, didn't have anywhere to go.
Wow.
But that was them having boundaries that
setting a boundary,
told me
right.
that, yeah, right. And, a lot of people say, well, it's tough love. Well, there's a difference between, just having like, say, tough love and actually, having those boundaries, because in all effects, like I was killing myself, but I was also killing my family, in a way. Like my mom and my brother were really, losing it, completely. When you do, the kind of things that, addiction, using the drug is just the small part of it. It's the things that happen because of that, right? It's the stealing, the lying, the getting arrested, the, overdosing, all these things that happen that are really the core issues that, cause families to break down and for all these things to happen. So
that's where it ends up, but that's not where it starts.
Exactly. And and you always hear, well, why can't you just stop? Why can't you just stop? Why can't you just stop? And what I tell people is, in addiction, when you're fully addicted to a substance, your brain actually changes the way it works, right? So your brain literally tells your body that without this substance, you are going to die. And that's what withdrawal is, right? Your withdrawal is your brain telling your body that without this substance, you're going to die. And even though, or at least in opiate addiction, it's not always, it can be fatal, but, in alcohol addiction and other addictions, it actually, is fatal sometimes to withdraw without some kind of medication. It's that fear of that, that getting sick and not feeling normal. Not, for me, I hadn't gotten high in years. To me, getting high every day was just feeling normal, right? I didn't really get high until like one of the first times that I actually used, and I felt like, oh, this feels amazing. After that, it's just feeling normal. And when they start to understand that, and they start to understand that, he's not trying to, he's just trying to survive. And I have learned, these are my coping mechanisms. My coping mechanism was, when shit happened, I got high. You know what I mean? I got high to deal with life because I couldn't deal with life without being high. It doesn't mean you're weaker. It doesn't mean that you're, not as strong as someone who doesn't have that. Most people in addiction have some kind of either mental, unfortunately, a lot of people have, depression, anxiety. A lot of people who in addiction, more times than any, have very traumatic things that has happened to them. And people cope in different ways, and a lot of ways that addicts cope is through use. So when Melderon and my mom learned all this stuff, and I basically stopped relying on them for money, for everything, it told me that, hey, there's consequences for my actions, and I can't just rely on everyone else, or I can't just manipulate people into getting what I want anymore. So it took a while.
I'm not going to be okay if I keep doing this.
Exactly. And it took a while to sink in, maybe about a year or so for, once they started. But after a while, the only thing I knew I could rely on my mom and my brother for was for them to help me when I was ready to get clean. Right. That was the one thing I knew I could rely on them for, not for money, but the fact that I knew I could rely on them, that's what saved my life. Right. That's what allowed me to get clean. And, when I tell people and, parents, anyone's listening to this, is like, if there's one thing, if you have a loved one that is going through it, the one best thing you can do for them is, learn how to set those boundaries. But when they're ready to try to get clean, just be there for them. You know what I mean? In that time. That's the best thing you can do for them.
To like literally like put your hands up in the air and say, it's like that, I don't want to get into religion, but how Christianity, it's one of those things where it's like, just let it go and give it to God. That's literally what you have to do with your loved one. And that's really, really hard to do, right? Like it's like, oh, just let him sit. He's on the streets. Well, just let it, it's so hard, right?
I can't imagine.
Everything in evolution tells you not to do it, right?
Yeah.
Evolution tells you take care of your kin. You have the same DNA. You have to take care of that person. And for a mother, it's like 100 times worse, right? So it's like for a mother, it's like this I carry this child, like I have to, and you have to literally say no to all of your natural instincts, and that's very, very hard.
Become completely unattached from what happens to that person.
Yeah,
that's
in a way. Yeah,
Defcamp said is huge. Like up to people who use opioids in a way that's illicitly or using prescribed opioids in a way that are not intended. Of those individuals, as high as 90% have a comorbid, meaning coexisting, mental health disorder. 90%. So that includes like depression, anxiety, OCD, anything you could think of. If we lump all of these things into a number, about 90. So most studies show it's near 90%. So these people are self-medicating. Is what they're doing.
Exactly.
It's not like it's a they're just degenerates.
Like I just want to get high. Like I just want to feel great all the time.
No one wakes up in the morning and says, "I want to be a heroin addict." Like no one says that, right?
Yeah.
So
in a way, the addiction when it starts out is a cure to a problem.
It is
absolutely.
And it ends up consuming the problem that it solved, right?
Yes, and creates numerous other problems. Yeah.
Yep. Damn. That's crazy.
But and it's I'm sorry, I just wanted to
go on.
The one thing that there's been a ton of things that have helped me along the way. My family, the most was my family, but finding healthy outlets, finding healthy things to because a lot of people have a really big struggle is that when they stop using is that they're bored, right? They have stopped talking to all their friends that they got high with. They maybe can't work because they have convictions, or they can't find this or find that. And they're living home with their parents or whatever. So it's trying to find healthy things to get motivated about, because when you stop using, basically your brain stops making dopamine on your own when you start injecting heroin, and it starts relying on that dopamine from the heroin. So many people in early recovery are depressed because your brain literally isn't producing enough dopamine to keep you normal. So that's why we see so many people relapse in that first year, which is really pivotal. And finding something to motivate you and to help you feel good about yourself is really important. And for me, one of those things was actually WoW, and playing WoW and having that outlet and, feeling good and, having friends in the game. And I don't think, it might sound silly, but I can't really underplay how important, this game has been for me over the years. Right. And being able to talk to people, relate with people, and slowly come out of my shell and feel okay with being me, right? That really happened through playing WoW. And I think a lot of people find that outlet in other ways, and for a lot of people I have talked to, WoW has been that thing for them as well. So and it's such a different kind of game, right? Because you're kind of, especially in classic WoW, you're kind of forced to talk to people, right? Whereas in retail, you can get away with doing stuff, by yourself. But in classic WoW, you're almost forced at times to do stuff with other people. And it was that push that I was given, that little push to hey, talk to this person to really help me come out of my shell. So it's so interesting in how that really helped me, just giving that little push to say, hey, you know what, just whisper this guy, ask him for help. Next thing you know, I'm talking with this guy about, the last 10 years of my life. And he's telling me about, his deployment in Iraq and how he got addicted to this and another. It's a true story. It's a really
all because you asked for mage food.
All because I asked. Yeah, exactly. Literally because of that. And it's I can't underplay just how important that was. Yeah.
That's quite the rounded story. Bring it back to WoW. Before we go back to WoW though, I want to ask another question, if I may, about that experience. And again, your perspective, Melderon. So you talked a few moments ago about what it was like before Defcamp started getting help, and then about the boundaries and how I'm sure that must have been very difficult. I'm sure how elated you felt when Defcamp started getting help. what's it like seeing how things have progressed now? I just think it's a really kind of very interesting story to see you guys, two brothers, working on healing yourselves and each other and your guildmates. It's a headline that writes itself, I feel like. What's your perspective on how where things have ended up with Defcamp?
I mean, to be honest, he's really broken a lot of odds. I mean, like there's not many people that could say they got clean, they were able to work in that field and help people who are trying to get clean. You know, I what else can you say? I mean, what else can you say? I mean, like it's I hate to use the word miracle because I don't think it's, I don't know, but it really kind of is. I mean, like the odds of someone getting clean is low, and staying clean for as long as he did is low. What's it like 5%, something like that?
It's very low
for as long as you've been clean.
Yeah.
So you started using Defcamp at the age of, you said it was like 12 or 13?
13 was when I started my first opiate use, yeah.
And you said you've been clean for 6 years. I'm not trying to put an age on you, but how long were you using for?
Off and on about 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
More than half your life at that point.
Yeah.
That does sound pretty amazing.
I mean, we're still brothers. We still get each other's throats, right? Like, I'm not saying it's perfect.
That's what brothers do. Let's be honest.
Exactly,
I got one too. I know what you mean.
But to be able to reconcile things with him and know that, you know, he's still going to be there for me, and I mean, like, we're not just brothers; we're best friends as well.
Yeah.
Like, it's, you know what I mean. Like, the relationship I have with my brother is very, I know, like, I didn't really have my dad there growing up. I had my big brother. You know what I mean? And I didn't really have. My mom was working like 2-3 jobs. I had my brother. Like, you know, it's almost like it's hard to describe, but like, we do everything together. We do, and I mean, it's awesome. It is.
Yeah, you know, part of the really shitty thing about being an analytically minded person is, to be honest, I was preparing for the opposite. So, because, you know, I looked at what was happening, and I did research myself, and, you know, it's like, odds are they're going to wind up in jail or dead, back and forth from rehab their whole life, you know, all these things, and I'm just like,
yeah. And I was very close. I mean, there was a reason for him, because there was a point where I was, you know, basically waking up and hoping that I was going to overdose. Like, there was a long time that was my reality, and you know, they were basically having to, you know, get ready for that reality, because it was going to come. I was in the hospital for months because I had gotten an infection in my leg, which I was like basically hours away from basically going septic and dying from that.
Holy shit.
And you know, just so many other things. I was in a psych ward for almost a month, where I was in a drug-induced psychosis, and they thought I was never going to come out of that.
Holy crap. What?
Yeah. So
what's drug-induced psychosis? What does that mean?
Basically, I lost my mind. I didn't know what reality was. I thought I was in a coma or I was dead, and I was constantly I was literally, you know, almost like stuck in a trip where you don't know. I didn't know what reality was. I thought I was seeing people. I was having conversations with people that weren't there. I was trying to, you know, kill people. I was trying to jump out of windows. I was basically strapped down to a bed 24/7 for.
This is all because he took you know, a combination cocktail of different. This wasn't even opioids that caused this, correct?
I was on opiates, but it was at one point I was, you know, basically a trash can. I was taking everything that I could get my hands on, and I had taken some synthetic marijuana. I had taken almost a very large amount of benzos, probably about 40 to 50 pills or in a day, and all these different other drugs that I was on, which led to me going into the psychosis that basically lasted. Even when I was out of the psych ward, I still wasn't sure what reality was, and
How did
lasted
it
a
come
really
back
long
to you? Was it
time.
like a gradual thing, or did it just snap in one day?
Very gradual. Yeah, no, it was gradual because towards the end of my stay at the psych ward, I was just playing along with what I thought I needed to do to get out.
Playing the part. Yeah.
I still thought that I was, somewhere else.
Although
But
being able to pass
eventually,
as not crazy is perhaps an indicator that there's something not crazy underneath.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think my reality did start to come back to me very slowly though. But losing my mind, that for me was probably the most traumatic experience, especially during my addiction, because there were times where I thought that I was like, it's hard to describe, right? Because I thought that everyone in my family was dead and their skin was hanging from my walls. I thought that I had killed someone. I thought that they were coming in to torture me. I thought that all these things were happening just as real as me talking to you right now. Like
Wow.
it's so hard to describe to what psychosis is, because people think that, some part of you must know that it's not real, but literally every part of me believed what was happening is as real as what's happening right now, and that's how scary it is. And
Is that scary for you too, Defcamp, sitting on the sidelines?
For
I
me?
mean, sorry, Melderon. Melderon.
Oh yeah. So when I went and visited him at this mental institution or whatever it was, I remember walking up to him and giving him something, and he just like looked through me, and I'm just like, I don't know. It's really hard to explain. Like I've never, before that point, I've never seen someone totally out of touch with reality in my life. Like, never seen that before, right? Imagine going up to your loved one, your wife, and saying like, hey, honey, how you doing? And she's like, who are you? Like that's like out of the blue, right? And you're just like, it was hard.
It's
it was very,
unsettling.
very hard. Yeah. And the horrible thing about it is that the doctors there didn't communicate with us very well. Apparently, this is normal when you take that much of a substance.
Yeah, and they just gave me a bunch of other drugs to take. And they said they prescribed me bipolar while I was in there in a drug-induced psychosis. Which I don't know how they. Yeah.
And then finally, my dad was like, my dad had said something to them, and they were like, oh yeah, he'll come out of it eventually. It's just this is Bob, and he's like, well, when are you going to tell us that? Because when your loved one's in a psych ward, you don't really know what's going to happen after that. Like, are they in there the rest of their life? Who knows? So it was a very challenging time.
Yeah,
for sure. And like Def said, but that wasn't the last time, and Def had to get to that point where he was ready to want to get help, and he eventually got there. But it was a roller coaster ride for sure. It sucked. Yeah, it was tough.
Wow.
Yeah,
oh, quite an experience. And so okay, so you got to the point and where you were ready to start recovering. And can you connect that event with when you started realizing how WoW was going to help you do that?
Yeah, I think at first, it wasn't a direct link at first, because even when I was still, because I had times of sobriety before, short bursts of sobriety, where either I was always addicted to something. I feel like I would get clean and I would immediately get into a relationship, and that woman was like my new addiction almost. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
NRE, baby, it's good.
Yeah. So it's very it took a lot for me to kind of find out how to have that healthy balance. You know what I mean? Which is still something that I struggle with today. You know what I mean?
I can relate.
Yeah. So
I'm up late at night talking about video games. My wife's in the other room. So yeah, I get it.
Exactly. So yeah. So at first, it was basically that little escape, and then it began to we just got an Amber Alert.
Oh.
Once I had gotten clean, it was very much like trying to find that balance and trying to find out how to do this in a healthy way. Because I remember when back in TBC, was like one of the first times I had gotten clean, I literally played TBC like 24/7. Like I did not do anything else but play WoW. You know, I was like, I'm going to get, do every raid. I'm going to get 2,300 rating on my priest, and I'm going to do all this and that. And I definitely played WoW to an even an unhealthy extent. You know what I mean?
Unhealthy even for you at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but as I got older, and as I started to understand my addiction, it was something that I could, see where, okay, if I'm going a little bit too far into this, or if I'm, losing myself into this again, because, relapse and addiction is something it's more of a state of mind than it is actually, picking, it starts with a thought process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that thought process is, oh, I can just do this for a little bit, or I can do that, and it's going to be okay. And it's basically going back into those old habits. And so much of recovery is changing those old habits, finding new ways to cope with things. So for me, it was, finding out, okay, I love this game and I want to play it, but I don't want it to consume my life again, right? So I'm finding a healthy way to do that, and still having healthier outlets, and not making it my one and only thing. Something that's great with content creation is it allows me to still have that game, but do it in a healthy way where I'm, being constructive. I'm being, either whether I'm streaming, I'm, maybe, making money or doing whatever, you're still being constructive, and you're doing something that is, bettering yourself, and having those goals. And, something for me was important is to have those goals, right? I wanted to go back to school and get my CRS. I wanted to, get confident enough to be able to stream, and gaining that confidence and doing those things was definitely easier to do when I started to play WoW in a way where I was, comfortable to talk to people, but also still have, my reality where I was, I built a relationship again with my mom and my brother. I never really had a normal relationship with my mom and my brother. I never really talked to them, you know what I mean? So
you had a lot
building
of
those
catching up to do, I
relationships.
bet.
Yeah, I had a lot of catching up to do, man. When you get addicted, you pretty much turn your brain off to where you were when you I was a 13-year-old kid, basically, and I had to basically learn how to do all these things again, and how to do it in a way that wasn't unhealthy. So yeah, I definitely think that WoW helped me in a lot of ways, that I was able to learn how to have healthy relationships with people. And one thing for me was really important was having commitments. So if I committed myself to something back before, that meant nothing to me. You know what I mean? It meant nothing to me that I told someone that I was going to be there for a podcast, that, or whatever, or it meant nothing to me that I told someone I was going to do something before them. So one thing for me was if I'm going to sign up for this raid or whatever, I'm going to make sure that I come, and I'm going to make sure that I do it. I'm going to make sure that
prepared. You have consumables.
and I'm prepared, and I have my consumes, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being prepared for commitments for me was a really, it was like a new frontier. So that was something that I kind of explored through WoW. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's.
And did that then percolate out to through the rest of your life too?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So if I committed to going to and speak at someone's meeting, you know what I mean, or to help someone with something, I made sure that I did that, and that people knew that when I put my word to something and I said I was going to do something, that I was going to do it. I mean, it's obviously something that I'm still working on. I'm sure that everyone works on that kind of stuff, but it's something that I know now, that when I put my mind to something and I say that I want to do something, I want to follow up with that. And as before, that was something that I never did, and I still struggle with that now. But I think I'm a lot better where I was than where I was.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've managed to find an environment where you were able to learn some new strategies to handle the feelings that maybe when you were a kid, let's be honest, would have driven you to use.
Absolutely.
So if you felt uncomfortable, but but by doing the kind of scene shift over to, Nagrand, or insert Burning Crusade zone here.
Zanger Marsh, or
one of the classics.
Yeah.
Then suddenly it's like the stakes are different. They don't feel as serious. And you also can kind of detach yourself from the results a little bit too, knowing that like these things are happening to your character. And although everyone is their character, at least a little bit, you can practice detachment more easily. Sounds like.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And I think, looking back at that now, that was definitely something that helped me, right? Because at the same time, it felt good, but I knew that, like, hey, this is it was like doing a model version of it first, right? Like having that little model version and then doing the real thing later. So it just taught me how to do these things, and it was almost like I was going to school for it, or schooling, like just prepping myself for the real world.
Yeah.
Which is really cool when you have a game that has its own world, right? Because you have a lot of these things, how to manage money, right? Like I remember I would just, every time I get gold, I would spend it. You know what I mean? I gotta buy this thing, which I still really, I spend gold on my alts way too quickly. Melderon can attest to this. I buy them friggin' epics and shit, but I like to have, my good epics and stuff like that. Just like
they deserve it, right?
New pair of shoes or something, right? Exactly. But at least I have 3,000 gold now or something like that, whereas before I would have 3 gold, so I'm managing my money a little bit better.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's all about the baby steps, right?
Exactly.
So